So this next piece of material, like most good ideas, is fairly simple. It's just a list of people who ought to be killed. Okay? All right. Starting with these people who read self-help books. Why do so many people need help? Life is not that complicated. You get up, you go to work, you eat 3 meals, you take one good shit, and you go back to bed. What's the fucking mystery? And the part I really don't understand, if you're looking for self-help, why would you read a book written by somebody else? That's not self-help, that's help. There's no such thing as self-help. If you did it yourself, you didn't need help. You did it yourself. Try to pay attention to the language we've all agreed on. And a similar mystery to me. Motivation books, motivation seminars. Why would anyone need to be motivated by someone else? I say if you lack motivation, a seminar isn't going to help you. What you really need is to be smashed in the head 30 or 40 times with a golf club. That'll fucking motivate you. Or else it'll at least get you up and moving around the room. You know, locate your socks, shit like that. Get the day rolling. Motivation is bull. If you ask me, this country could use a little less motivation. The people who are motivated are the ones who are causing all the trouble. Stock swindlers, serial killers, child molesters, Christian conservatives. These people are highly motivated. Highly motivated.
Don't dream it. Don't dream it. Don't dream it.
We've got to get out of this trap before this decadence saps our wings. I've got to be strong and try to hang on, or else my mind may well snap and my life will be lived.
It's beyond me. Help me, Mommy.
God bless living saints.
This is Craig Beam, and you are now listening to That Twilighty Show About That Zone, where we debate the power of positive thinking, notions of solipsism, and why Martians have more than 2 arms, and Venusians have more than 2 eyes. Martians love to smoke, Venusians love to cook, and humans love to read self-help books. Always remember, don't dream it, be it in the Twilight Zone. Stay tuned.
The Mind and the Matter, written by Rod Serling, directed by Buzz Kulik, is episode 63 of the American television anthology series The Twilight Zone, originally aired May 12th, 1961 on CBS. That's from the Wikipedia. Now, I know you warned me. I'm here with Craig Beam, back for a second appearance for this second season, and this is actually technically the very last episode we're recording. I've already recorded my finale and my wrap-up, but something happened. I think there was some kind of a freak accident involving a thunderstorm one night, and somebody swerved on the road during a rainstorm, and so we had to push it back 2 weeks.
That's so much better than the real story. We'll go with it.
Get some sleep at night. Eat regular meals. Lots of milk, fresh vegetables. Greens. Oh, you can't beat those greens for vitamins. I'm a spinach and lettuce man myself. I'd even have them for breakfast if, well, the people wouldn't look at me a little tilt. But the power's in the greens, Beechcroft. The power's definitely in the greens. You're not drinking, are you, Beechcroft?
I don't drink, Mr. Rogers.
Well, then, if you don't drink and you don't stay out late at night, are you watching your diet?
If you'd really like to know, Mr. Rogers, if you'd really like to know precisely why I am so dead tired, you ought to try coming to work on the subway at 7:30 every morning, then jamming into an elevator like part of a herd of cattle, then working in that cacophonous din that you call an office. Always get jostled, always get shoved, always get pushed around.
Why, take hold of yourself, Beechcroft. For goodness sakes, man, take hold.
I'll take hold, Mr. Rogers. I'll take hold when I can achieve that millennium, that absolute perfection that comes with solitude. You read me, Mr. Rogers? People, people, people.
You said it wasn't a favorite, which I can completely understand, but it is prescient, okay? The subject matter being what our society in this modern age has had to endure over the past, I'm going to say 16 years, since the year 2000, but it also ushers in the era of the me generation, starting with the baby boomer generation, the self-involved qualities that some people associated with it. The baby boomers, Americans born during the 1946 to 1964 baby boom, were dubbed the me generation by writer Tom Wolfe during the 1970s. Again, that's from the Wikipedia.
We are trusting Wikipedia. We are trusting.
I try. I know people who contribute to it, and sometimes they make up fun stuff, but a lot of times there's some really good, stuff in there. I mean, remember the old days, you had to go to the library for that kind of... So you have this self-involved turd, Archibald Beechcroft, which is such a fake-sounding name. It seems like Serling just belched out this idea on the fresh typing paper. It's not inspiring in any sense of the word. He was sitting there. He's like, what name can I come up with? I know, Archibald Beechcroft. So he works in an office situation, right? This is New York City, I'm assuming. He lives in a tiny apartment. He's sick of people. He's a misanthrope. What he wants is peace and quiet. This guy gives him a book called The Mind and the Matter, which is a self-help book. And I did a little research. The self-help movement actually started in 1937 with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, positive reinforcement book. So it wasn't a new trend, but it gained enormous popularity in the 70s because of that me generation. Codependent No More in 1986, Who Moved My Cheese, which for some reason my wife's stepmother owns, that we had to get her for, I think we got her that for a Christmas a few years back. And then we come up to The Secret from 2006 by Rhonda Byrne. I remember I was at a dinner party a few years ago. I excused myself to use the bathroom, and for toilet reading, my host had a copy of The Secret. And I was curious, and I flipped through it. It's all based on materialistic urge. If you want something, visualize it, and then you ultimately get it. It was very interesting. Have you ever looked at any of those kinds of books?
Not in any meaningful fashion. If I want to amuse myself.
Not sure. Seriously, no. You're not like, I want that new cell phone. I want that new cell phone.
Well, I just go down to Verizon and get it if I want a new cell phone.
Yes, but you have to visualize the money in your hand. And then you have to visualize the clerk, I don't know.
Oh, but no, see, now Verizon has me in one of those, like, perpetual plan things where I'm always just making payments on my phone. So, no, I'm Verizon's bitch.
Oh, so you're a prison. You're in a prison.
I am.
You see, folks, we're all trying to please someone else. And as soon as you're not a human being, you're a human doing. Then what comes next?
A human going!
Bart, be quiet. What made you yell out that remark? You just wanted to express yourself, yes?
I do what I feel like.
That's marvelous. I couldn't have put it better myself. I do what I feel like. People, this young man here is the inner child I've been talking about.
What?
Yeah, it's funny. We've already kind of passed by this, but so he gets this book,
right?
This idiot that he works with, this nebbishy twerp.
Well, it's like some guy spills something on him.
Yeah, he spills something on him, and Archibald's response is, "You clumsy clod," which you would get fired now. If you
Wait, would you actually? He says clod. You would get fired. Does clod mean something?
Well, if you went around verbally abusing coworkers, I feel like you maybe could get away with that, in decades past. Now with the concerns of bullying.
Well, I mean, like if it were the rest of us,
civility. I mean, if I started walking around my office calling people names, I'm pretty sure I would get in trouble.
Well, if you said clumsy clod, people would just look at you and say, "What's a clumsy clod?"
I'd be explaining my profanity.
Yeah.
But what really strikes me is just a couple of minutes later, he's talking to his boss, and he says that he wants to murder the entire population.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I always, whenever it's an office environment, I'm always putting myself in that situation. It's like, now, if I talked to my boss and indicated that I was going to murder the entire population, I'm just imagining like the helicopter and the SWAT guys, pinning me to the floor, and I'm getting hauled off to talk to a psychiatrist. And it's just funny to me that his boss just kind of likes,
well, it depends. It all depends on the tone. Like if you walk into your boss's office and say, "I want to murder the entire population," they'll be like, "Hey, man, I hear you." But if you come in there and say, "I want to murder the entire population,"
well, I feel like Beechcroft is fairly serious about it. I mean,
I have access to chemicals in my basement. I'm going to make bombs and destroy everyone. I mean, like,
Right.
You want to sit down for a minute, Arch, and think about that.
Hey. So he gets this book, and it's apparently the only copy of this book.
Right? Yeah, it's a first edition.
First and only edition. They do the same thing later in season 5, a kind of a stopwatch, where we got this magical object.
That is very similar. Yeah,
it's the same thing. Somebody just randomly gives it to somebody else. Why would you give that away?
They're right. They're absolutely, unequivocally right. Concentration is the most underrated, unknown power in the universe. Why, a person could move mountains. There's really no limit to what a man could do using the power properly. No limit at all.
I guess what you have to do with this book is you just, like you said, you have to just visualize. You have to just concentrate. And
it is very much The Secret, except, of course, it has a supernatural power. It's probably a cursed object like you would find on Friday the 13th, the series or something.
Oh, my God, I love that show.
It's one of my favorite things ever in the history of the universe was watching that show. I loved it.
I think here it was on like Sunday afternoons or something, and I would watch it there.
They used to show it. I got my wife hooked because she never watched it, and then I got her hooked. They showed it on Sci-Fi for a time, and then they show it on what is it, Chiller or something? One of those really small cable things.
Mm-hmm. I think I have that.
Beechcroft starts to put the theories of the book into practice. That if you wish something away, it will go away. It's an exercise in solipsism, as I said, the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. If you believe it, according to this book, you can make it reality. So he makes his landlady disappear, which I found funny. I pay rent too. It works. So he goes big like you do, with lazy writing, rather than truly exploring the consequences of a rare gift imparted by way of a self-help book. Serling uses kid gloves to either suggest that the power of positive thinking cannot bring about happiness or contentment, or suggest that if you're a mindless consumer slave, you'll always be a mindless consumer slave. I'm not quite sure.
Back to the landlady for a second. He doesn't just make her disappear. He makes her extinct. He specifies extinction. He's a fucking murderer. I mean,
well, yeah. He harbors antisocial thoughts,
and what really emerges is he ends up being a proto Anthony Fremont from It's a Good Life,
in a way, but less likable.
much less likable. Yeah.
I mean, he's not a little boy. You know, little boys need structure and guidance. This guy's a full-grown adult who needs to, spend the rest of his time in a padded cell.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that cannot be adequately explored, either with Shelley Berman's characterization, which is unlikable, not a person we can identify with. You shouldn't tell a story like this with your antagonist already in place. He's supposed to be the protagonist, but he just antagonizes me. Yeah. And then you have the problem with the 25-minute format. I felt that what we needed here was a more sympathetic character evolving over a longer running time. That, for me, is the failure of this episode.
Well, I hate it either way. I just, when you said that, I just imagined them doing this in the 4th season, so it would be an hour long, and I shuddered because the thought of this for an hour just.
What if you created? No, I'm just. The problem is, what if you created a likable character? What if you had someone like? Oh, let's see, who's a very I don't know. Burgess Meredith, or Jack Klugman, or Anne Francis, or a female. Maybe a female would be interesting.
Sure.
For me, it's fascinating to see the birth of this self-help movement in this episode. And really, Shelley Berman was exceptional in the role, completely unlikable. If his job was to be a completely unlikable douche, he succeeded brilliantly.
Give him an Emmy.
Absolutely. 2. Give him 2 Emmys.
Why not? One for each.
All right. We had our salad, so now it's time for dessert. With Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? I really like this one. It's the quintessential Twilight Zone episode. It's a yarn spun around a campfire. You have a couple of cops in the snowy woods. Great photography here. Right. Especially if I suspect if it was shot on a soundstage. It's amazing if you take that into consideration.
I believe it was shot on a soundstage. I would need to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, because there's no point to going out to an expensive location at night with a bunch of lights. You can just control it in the studio setting, and it just looks wonderful. So the bridge is out, and the cops hear strange sounds, which they immediately surmise is some kind of unidentified flying object passing overhead, perhaps crashing. And a bus carrying a bunch of passengers has to make an unscheduled stop. Everybody files out, goes to the diner. Slow night, and you have to wonder, based on what we eventually discover, if it isn't possible that the owner of the diner orchestrated the crash at the bridge just so he could drum up some business. I mean, even if he didn't, it's still a great setup. But
well, you do, once you get to the end, if you start thinking back over it, you start to wonder about the backstory of all of this, and maybe there is some machinations going on.
Right.
It's a fine little bus line you work for, isn't it? They care so much about their schedules, don't they?
I wouldn't be too hard on them, mister. They have no control over the snow, bridges, the sides of hills that decide to come down. That's pretty much out of their hands.
What do you think?
They were all on the bus, weren't they?
What's trouble? You looking for somebody?
Driver, you got a passenger manifest?
Passenger manifest? What do you think I got parked out there, a 707? Mister, that's a 14-year-old bus, and business is lousy. My boss would run rum across the border if there was a profit in it.
The episode turns into a mood piece about paranoia. John Hoyt plays a businessman. The great character actor Jack Elam plays a nutty old man. It's really funny. A couple of weeks ago, I watched the movie Cannonball Run for my vintage cable box column, and Jack Elam is in it. He plays this drugged up doctor that Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise abduct, so nobody will question him driving an ambulance in the big race. And he shoots up Farrah Fawcett with sedatives and keeps giving everybody the finger. He is hilarious. This gets crazy pretty quickly. The cops get it into their heads that there's an extra patron in the diner not accounted for who came in with the bus passengers. Somebody in here ain't what they say they are, right? You have 2 sets of couples, one old and one young. You have the crazy old man. You have John Hoyt, who is an uptight putz. You have the driver, and you have this presumably hot dancer, the only person the driver noticed. Interesting how she's the hottie in the piece.
Oh,
this one.
my God, right? She played a nurse in the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So whenever I see her, I say, hello, nurse.
Hello, nurse. Say, wasn't that from, what was that?
Animaniacs.
That's right, yeah, because I know my wife and daughter watch that, and they always say that. Hello, nurse.
I loved Animaniacs. And I also like later, when they get back on the bus, both the bus driver and the cop make a very pronounced...
Yeah. They totally check out her ass.
Great long ass looking... And,
yeah, she's not bad. And you can almost hear it in the back of your head. You can almost hear this. Wah, 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 wah. You know.
It was so easy back then to objectify women and get away with it. You know, now
absolutely,
you just can't look at a woman's ass now.
No,
being
no.
slapped or sued. Or
now, on just a side note, I want to say that these cops are the worst. They are truly terrible examples of law enforcement. If Columbo were in that diner, we'd have our alien right after the first commercial break.
Ooh.
Their big test, their method of detection, is to ask who won the last World Series. I love baseball. I could answer that question, but a lot of people don't watch baseball. They don't like baseball. You know, in addition, an alien, if he did his homework and perhaps enjoyed the sport, he could answer that question.
Right.
We get into the paranoia. Everybody starts suspecting everybody else. Hoyt hides in plain sight by complaining and being loud, but Jack Elam's got his number, if you notice. He's obviously watching him and making mental notes of Hoyt's statements, right?
Right.
What's more, Hoyt is getting uncomfortable. Barney Phillips makes another appearance on the show. He's like one of these actors who appeared a million times on the show, but he never really was identified. He just sort of, I guess, slipped into the action. He has a very plain, regular face, kind of a character actor's face.
And somehow he ends up being one of the iconic images of the entire show by the end.
I think, okay, what did I write here? That Barney Phillips pulls it off much better than Hoyt, insofar as not revealing his true identity. Strange stuff starts happening in the diner, lights going on and off, phones ringing, jukebox starting up and stopping, weird psych-out stuff designed, I think, to make our humans panic.
That wasn't your gag, was it? I mean, a business about the jukebox starting like that?
Not me. I'm strictly short orders and pay your taxes. I don't know anything about science fiction.
Take me to your leader. Take me to your leader.
Find anything? No. Took a look at the bridge.
Holding up pretty well.
I know that bridge. What's more, I don't trust it.
Well, thank goodness we needn't concern ourselves with your judgment. If the bridge gets a clean bill of health, you'll drive that bus right across it.
Listen, mister. You may be a big shot in Boston, but when it comes to bridges and buses, I got seniority.
So this is quite a sadistic story, even for Serling. He delights in making humans look incredibly stupid, whether they're law enforcement or civilians, and the aliens play terrible games with these humans, and ultimately they all die.
No, I agree. Barney Phillips' character plays it much closer to the vest. And I also think he's a superior alien in general.
Probably, yeah. But
the third arm?
But why do we go immediately to aliens, though? You know, you're stuck in a diner during a snowstorm, the bridge goes out, you get off a bus, you go into the diner, you get some hot food in you, as they say. And why do we come to aliens immediately?
Well, it's the Twilight Zone. But, we had this in The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, where something strange happens and immediately, there's an alien in our midst. There must be.
Yeah, but that's because we have that stupid kid with the girl's voice talking about, well, I was looking at my comic book and they're aliens and they came and did all this stuff. And, everybody's taking this seriously.
Right. I mean, at least here we have something crashed into that pond. There are tracks leading from the pond to the diner. So, it could be, I don't know, like an Air Force jet, but then they just sort of leave.
Yeah, they just sort of leave.
They just kind of give up.
Yeah, the bridge, somebody calls, says the bridge is back up and you can all leave, so everybody leaves, right?
Oh, we're all friends again.
So what did we learn? Humans are horrible paranoid creatures that are more often than not right, at least when it comes to their paranoia, but unfortunately they're too late. They missed the boat. 9/11 was an inside job. Building 7, Nixon, Kennedy.
I think it's a punchline episode. I think it's hey, we have this great little bit at the end. How can we get there?
That must be it. He must have had the end first.
And I think it works. I think sometimes you can approach something like that and it goes horribly sideways. I think here, I think Serling does a pretty good job of it. What's really funny is his original idea for this was diner full of people don't trust each other, somebody's an alien, and they all leave. And we find out that it's a stray dog that is actually the alien, which is terrible. Which is just...
Well, wait a minute. You're saying, okay...
Well,
it's been done. John
this
Carpenter
would have been
did
a very
in Thing, and it was done in The Hidden, a movie that I had to recently watch.
Had to.
Well, I had to watch it for Extreme Cinema.
Oh yeah.
Alien Dog is if it were done, it would be definitely groundbreaking. I don't think we ever saw anything quite like that before. At that time.
I can't imagine it would have been an improvement. I think it's silly. I think this borders on silly, but it does it in a deft enough fashion that
it's darker. It's a lot darker.
Not real dark though. I mean, it's just kind of. I mean, there's kind of this.
Everybody dies. That's pretty damn dark.
Well, sure. I guess
all those people, and some of them were likable. But to me, this is a very sick episode. It's like on the order of The Silence or the Rip Van Winkle caper, which were both written by Serling, and he seems to be the most sadistic of the writers of the Twilight Zone episodes. But I like his style as a writer. He's very bold.
I think that because, you've kind of had this sort of I don't want to call it a comedic tone because it's not quite that, but there's a lightness to it. Even when it's dark, there's still a lightness to it. So when you get to this mass death of the entire bus full of people, it's not played as this great tragedy. It's unsettling, but it never
shift. I think in the narrative, if I must get pretentious a little bit, we shift in the narrative from the panic of the people in the diner to the conflict between the two aliens. And then it becomes obvious to me, as I switch up my accent here, it becomes obvious that this is simply a power struggle between two aliens, and they know damn well who each of them are.
Right.
And that's how it is. He's asking questions when Hoyt comes in, and he's not even wet. He's like, weren't you on the bus? Didn't you get wet? Or something like that. And he's like, wet. That's an interesting word, wet.
What's wet?
All right. The final revelation of the episode, of course, is that John Hoyt is, what is he? He's a Martian?
He's a Martian, yes.
He's a Martian. He's got more than a couple arms. And, Barney Phillips is the Venusian with the third eye.
And really 3 arms? He
might have had a fourth one, but we don't know where that was.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I still have to wonder about the logistics of just this extra arm sticking out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that leads into that. Like, the Venusian has his hat on the entire episode.
Yes.
So there's no cheating there. But when we see the third arm, it's got a shirt, it's got a jacket.
Yeah.
So his tailor must be amazing, first of all.
And there doesn't seem to be any indication that he ever has that third arm throughout the rest of the episode until we reach that point.
Right, and he has an overcoat, but it's just kind of draped across him. So if somebody had bumped into him...
I know. Or even just examine his posture for a second when he's standing up. For all we know, he could have 4 knees and an extra forehead, too.
Sure.
Maybe 3 ass cheeks instead of 2.
But they then throw in the whole, well, it's an illusion, so I don't know.
The whole thing is like an illusion. The phone call is an illusion. Yeah. We're looking at something that resembles a drama or perhaps a satire in sociology, and then it just turns into a cruel snuff movie where everybody dies,
Everybody.
And the cops, too. Didn't they die, too? They followed along on the bridge. The whole damn thing was broken.
I think so. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, everybody dies except those 2 people. Anyway, I did enjoy the episode. It's a lot of fun. It's much better than Mind in the Matter.
Ugh, but what isn't, though? This is good. It's one of those, someone somewhere Let's see how vague I can be with that. I remember reading somewhere someone describing it. Maybe it was Tom Elliott from the Twilight Zone podcast, which he got the good name.
That's the name of it, the Twilight Zone podcast.
Twilight Zone podcast.
Yeah, because you and me now, we have to put this stuff under the thing, and it says a Twilight Zone podcast, not the and a.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think he described this one as a nice palate cleanser. If you were, watching a marathon, you could watch a few heavier ones and then throw this one in. It's kind of a nice change up.
That's good, actually. Yeah, palate cleanser, and also, I don't know, make you feel a little bit better after looking at Mind in the Matter. Especially if you look at them in order or something. Because this is some episode I routinely just flip over. I don't waste my time with it because it's just so.
Agree.
There's a couple, and that's it's a TV show. You're producing 30 episodes a year. My God, of course you're going to have a couple of clunkers.
Yeah, I think we're probably fortunate in that most of them are pretty good, and some of them are great, and then a few of them are.
A friend of mine, Andrew, said that even at its worst, it still provides a minimum amount of entertainment.
Well, I can think of a couple that are.
He's not particularly charitable when it comes to certain things. So that's a grand, bold statement coming from him.
Okay. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both,
and there you have the Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone.
Okay, well, I figure, before we wrap it up, I want to talk to you a little bit about your podcast. You have a podcast out there, and by the time this episode airs, you'll have had your 3rd anniversary. And we're going to do a wrap-up and talk a little bit about those wonderful moments that you had on your podcast. I'm just kidding, of course. We haven't heard a damn thing yet. All we've heard is, at this point, at this taping, we've only heard a series of, 5 mini episodes?
5 mini introductory episodes.
Right, where Craig is talking about how he was a little boy and, I don't know, he discovered girls or something, and then there was some show called The Twilight Zone. And then he proceeded to spend years, he was tape recording the episodes. This is interesting stories. You gotta check out those intro episodes, because that, to me, you're selling yourself, and yourself is interesting. And that's where I think the real entertainment comes in. It just doesn't come in from us talking about this stuff, blah, blah, blah. No, it comes in from me doing wacky stuff and Craig doing wacky stuff and all the guests I have and all the things that he does. It's interesting because he tells stories about how he uses a tape recorder to tape the episodes just to hear the audio because he had no VCR at that point. Then he gets a VCR. Then he starts taping the episodes on television. Then he buys the Columbia House video library set. Then he buys the DVD, and then he buys the... It's just like this. This is the kind of stuff that is... This is fandom. This is what we did back then. We did this crazy stuff.
Yeah, what I really wanted to do with the intro episodes was what I kind of had always wanted to do with the blog, which was... Because it's called My Life in the Shadow of the Twilight Zone. So I really wanted there to be this personal aspect to it. It would be like a personal statement.
Absolutely.
And I didn't do a lot of that in the blog. I mean, other than a couple of really, really big examples, I mean, most of the time I was just doing episode reviews. So when I decided to do this, I thought, I'm going to really bring a personal edge to it. Not because I think that I'm particularly interesting or that, everyone needs to hear my story, but I mean, I don't know what else to really talk about.
Yeah.
Because there have now been about 13 or 14 different Twilight Zone podcasts. And if
including
all I
this
do... You do a couple of really interesting things, though. I mean, you look at more of like the pop culture connections. And I don't think there's a lot of that going on. And the rotating guest host thing is great. No, your podcast is unique. But I guess for my podcast, I just wanted it to be more of a personal statement. Because I think if I felt more invested in it on a personal level, it would be more interesting for me. It's not all about me. I mean, this first month of mini episodes it has been, and I think that's turned a few people off if you look at my iTunes reviews. But
yeah.
Starting with this Sunday, which by the time this is heard, it will be several months ago.
Wait, before, is this going to be a weekly or monthly, or did I ask you that before?
Weekly.
All right, so you're going to put out an episode. So by the time we get around to this one airing, which will probably be around Christmas time.
I should around then should have about 13 consecutive episodes.
Right.
It's probably going to run about like an hour each.
Okay.
I'm guessing. I don't know. We'll see.
Where are we?
You're in the middle. Between the two. The real and the shadow. Right now you're in a kind of a limbo.
Now, I'm not sure if the Bionic Woman's fembots were sexually capable, but since that show aired during the swinging 70s, I'm going to assume that they were. If you had the means and the technology, wouldn't you at least be tempted to live completely off the grid, in safety, surrounded by those that you loved the most? Does that make sense? Rawr, bots, more like it, am I right?
We will be back in 2 weeks discussing The Obsolete Man, the second season finale with Burgess Meredith and Fritz Weaver, and the third season premiere episode, 2, with Charles Bronson and Elizabeth Montgomery. Mark Giacomo will be joining me. Craig, it's been a sincere privilege to share your insights. Don't forget to visit Craig's sites. Here we go. My Life in the Shadow of the Twilight Zone at mylifeintheshadowofthetwilightzone.blogspot.com and My Life in the Glow of the Outer Limits at mylifeintheglow.of-the-outer-limits.blogspot.com. And check out Craig's Twilight Zone podcast, Between Light and Shadow. Can you tell us where we can find that again?
It's in all the usual podcast places. It's on iTunes. It's on Google Play. It's now on YouTube.
Great.
Which I totally jumped on your bandwagon. As soon as you did that, I did that too.
I knew you were. I knew you were going to do that, and I know a lot of people are going to do that now. Please remember, while humans are horrible, paranoid creatures, they are also intensely insecure and always looking for ways to improve themselves by means of purchasing self-help books. Happy holidays, everybody. Good night.
Good night.